Hi, everybody. David Noir back with my business partner, Jen Cordes. Hello, Jen.
Hi, David.
Welcome to another episode of our Intelligent Growth. We're on a weekly basis every Tuesday at noon Eastern across LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the Noir Group channel. We share, hopefully, practical, pragmatic insights on this idea of intelligent growth. We've been a long-time fan of growth. As a matter of fact, I often talk about I've never met a company that can cut its way to growth. So we love growth. We believe in growth. We're big fans and advocates of growth, but we also believe in prudent growth and intentional growth. So the focus of these sessions is to share ideas, perspectives with our audience on how to be more intentional about that growth. And obviously, given our legacy, given a lot of our work, relationships are big aspects of it. We're excited to launch a new mini-series on the key challenges in our conversations, in our work with chief marketing officers. That's the focus of today's session. Next week, we'll tackle chief revenue or commercial growth officers. And then finally, chief customer officers. So if you think of those three as critical to every organization's not just initial sale, but kind of ongoing and very relationship-centric approach to growth, we thought it'd be interesting to talk about the challenges we hear from them, the challenges that our research highlights they're facing on a daily basis, and beyond the challenges, what are some of the opportunities? Jen, what are you most looking forward to in this new mini-series?
Really just diving into the meat of the problems, but also giving potential solutions and things to consider as these roles evolve in time and as they lead their teams.
And it's exciting, and we're blessed that we work with both hyper growth, venture or private equity backed organizations. We'll talk more about that path to an exit or path to an IPO, as well as more mature companies, whether in mid-market or enterprise. We've got industrial manufacturing clients, professional services, financial services, hospitality and travel, obviously a lot of tech clients. And the beautiful part about kind of our view of what's happening is a lot of different size companies, industries, maturity levels, geographic focus or prominence. So it's a chance to really see challenges and opportunities across a wide spectrum of size, company, industry. And what's fascinating is that they're very similar. They have their nuances, but I think they're very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And again, this is a new mini-series. Hope you'll join us Tuesdays at noon Eastern, where we share and we'll build on kind of the previous sessions, with each being their own standalone concept. We're spending a lot of time thinking about the subscription economy. And as I said, not just a hyper-growth SaaS-based technology clients, but also a lot of mature companies, mature industries are consistently thinking about how do we either convert our current business model or certainly introduce a new business model around that recurring revenue model, around that not only a much more attractive multiple and valuation of the organization, but a much more kind of clear line of sight in terms of that potential and the opportunity to create value on an ongoing basis and deepen that relationship. So Jen, talk about some of the interesting aspects of the ARR business that you see and that you experience regardless of the company's size or industry.
Yeah, so the ARR model is really interesting, just how it's being applied to the areas and space, like industries that aren't necessarily known for recurring revenue, and the ingenious ways that they're applying it. So we've talked about that people who install elevators, for example, yes, they'll sell you the elevator, but it's also the services on top of that. And then it's the experience that people can have from that, and that it becomes where they don't have to think about it. So they're outsourcing all of that to another company just because it becomes more seamless. And that's recurring revenue for whatever company is servicing that elevator, for example. So it's just really interesting to see how the entire organization is shifting and how other industries outside of software are really leveraging that recurring business mindset.
And that's exactly right. And for our audience, I've got a water bottle here, and I often talk about, I may not really want this water bottle. What I want is the cold water that's in it. So instead of a traditional capital expensive or CapEx business of you selling me this, and now I have to worry about storing it and maintaining it and cleaning it and keeping up with it, all I really want is the cold water inside. The idea is, what if you rent it to me? And I don't have to worry about, you clean it, you replace the parts, you make sure there's a fresh one. If this one breaks, there's a replacement one. And I'll gladly pay now an operating expense of lending you or renting this water bottle to you, because what I really want is the outcome or the impact from that product, not necessarily all the costs and maintenance of it. So as Jen mentioned, we're blessed to work with a lot of mature companies and mature industries, and every one of them are at some point of thinking about the evolution of the go-to-market strategy and how do we really participate in this subscription economy. We're also really excited to repeat this past year. We held our inaugural Relationship Economics Summit, where we gathered a broad spectrum of C-suite executives for a few days, and they really shared their challenges and opportunity across very different industries, which lends itself really nicely to our focus on the customer lifecycle journey maturity model. Jen, talk about this for a second for the audience who may have not seen us reference it.
Sure. So for those who are watching this live, this is some of the work that we do and the research that we've done related to the handoffs and the interconnectivity between sales, marketing, and customer success, and that ongoing experience that a prospect and then eventually a customer has, and how to create a seamless and repeatable process across those various departments.
And for our audience, the reason this is really unique is, as Jen alluded to, is the recurring revenue business model mandates a 360-degree view of that customer at every touch point, and not just functionally what is marketing, sales, customer success doing, where the products fit in, but really the handoffs between those functions. So the frictionless, the seamless journey around this infinity loop becomes invaluable, and it will unequivocally set one company with very similar products or services apart from others because of the experience they create for their prospects, for their customers. So go ahead.
Sorry, I'd also add that when this is done really well, the customer experience and the client experience is exponentially better than when somebody isn't doing this so well or when there's unnecessary friction. For example, when the left hand of a business, for example, marketing or support, doesn't necessarily know what's happening on the right hand, sales, customer success, but when all of them are working together, and when you're talking to your customer success rep, they know what support tickets that you've submitted, or when you're talking to marketing, they know that you've already done some sort of onboarding or training. And it's just that attention to detail, if you will, that really sets any business apart. And it's those small details, and it's that anticipation of what they're going to look for next, or what you could potentially offer of value to them next, that really makes them think that you're paying attention to them, and it is at scale. So you need to have the systems to support that level of detail, but it's really important to have that unique experience for everyone.
And that unique experience that Jen alludes to, it's been a passion of ours, been a focus of ours. You fundamentally are doubling down on relationships. So it isn't just a transactional, I'm going to sell them that first sale. It's how do I continue to earn the opportunity to add value, and for them not to just renew, but really expand or extend the relationship in other parts of the business with a deeper solution. I'm interviewing executives for my Forbes leadership column, and I was talking to a transportation executive yesterday who said, beyond, being a freight forwarder where you just get the freight, from point A to point B, the large organizations are going in and really talking about a total solution of, we'll ship it from point A to B on shipping containers, and then we'll fly it B to C. And by the way, we'll show you now through technology tracking all along the way, and we'll also warehouse it for you, so you don't have to worry about warehousing. So it's more than just shipping. It's also now logistics and supply chain dynamics. And so it's a classic case of, how do I deepen that relationship with a unique value add versus just offer a transactional approach to it? So from our Relationship Economics Summit, from conversations with a broad spectrum of executives, what we continue to see is fundamental market. Now, some people call it challenges. We believe they're opportunities. Yet they're disguised as key enterprise risk. So whether it's economic uncertainty or the talent shortage or shifting market trends at an increasingly rapid pace, corporate initiatives are getting more complex, where they touch, often with unintended consequences, very different parts of the organization. Reputational risk with what happened to Bud Light and their marketing campaign recently. The inability to reach target audiences. People are, executives and decision makers are not, easily reachable when they're not in their office. And if you can't reach them and they're inundated with, emails and LinkedIn messages, and just how do you do that? Which, by the way, creates further stress on mental health and burnouts of not just executives, but their teams. So every one of these things, including cyber threats, by the way, and geopolitics that we don't think is going to go away anytime soon, we believe every one of these enterprise risk is a market opportunity, particularly if you can identify an advantage. In this case, we've done this for ourselves, and then you have a potential solution for it. Then I think it gives you entry points and really interesting conversations. For the purpose of this session, we really want to focus on, we talk obviously growth. So Pricewaterhouse, known for their annual global CEO survey, highlighted that threats to top line continue to be worrisome for most CEOs. How do we become very consistent in our customer acquisition? How do we really amplify our customer retention? How do we, as Jen mentioned, around that customer lifecycle journey, make sure we have our finger on the pulse of what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what their priorities are, and how do we continue to make sure we are their relationship of choice, because they always have a choice. And if we're top of mind, and as Jen mentioned, if the sales team knows what service tickets are open and they become advocates, they truly become solution sellers of not just here's my product, but now here's a complete solution of how we can take that issue, that challenge off of your plate, Mr. Customer, make it easier for you to work with us. They separate themselves from their peers. Jen, any comments on top line growth? Are you surprised by this at all?
Not surprised by this at all. And with the market uncertainty, everybody's being asked to do more with less, yet still increasing their revenues. And so really, how do you do that? And that is the challenge that most executives face, and their supporting teams as well.
And a big part of, again, our focus, our research is, the strategic value of relationships as an enabler of that enterprise growth. So both within the organization as well as external to it, we're finding executives who are doubling down on their teams, doubling down on their focus on driving that growth through their relationships, through this exceptional experience that Jen alluded to. Even in RevOps, all right? Nobody's investing in RevOps because they have nothing else to do. And they have, no client is calling saying, we have so much money, it's obscene, and we have no idea what to do with it. It's really doubling down on those relationships and the insights from those relationships. So when we talk about intelligent and profitable growth, we're seeing it really create enterprise value in three distinct paths. One is a logical, one is expansion. So whether you launch an idea or, again, this is the hyper growth sector that we work with. Series A funding all the way through E, path to, we don't know when the IPO market is going to come back and in what shape. So path to an exit or an IPO, we put all that in expansion. Mature companies, mature industries have already kind of beyond that. So they're really looking at integration and optimization. So whether it's organic growth, cross business units, we're seeing increasingly more M&A opportunities. Cybersecurity is one of those that's going to continue to evolve. A lot of investments last several years in cybersecurity, a lot of overlap. Most CIOs and CISOs that we know don't want to deal with 500 different tools and platforms. So how do we start to consolidate those needs into fewer platforms that have broader capabilities? And then we see a lot of roll-ups. That's all integration optimization. The last part, obviously, is transformation. So whether you're trying to iterate the business model, innovate, or really disrupt the business model or your go-to-market strategy, insights on how intelligently, how profitably we're growing becomes really, really important. So on that note, Jen, you and I talked about this. CMOs are being increasingly asked, along with their CRO and chief customer officer counterparts, to drive that growth. And you and I talk about, number of challenges that our CMO relationships are sharing that they're just facing on an ongoing basis. So I'd love to just touch up on them and then have you elaborate on kind of each of these. Obviously, let's start with this evolving, an area you're passionate about and your team really focuses on, this rapidly evolving technology. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Why is this top of mind for a number of CMOs you and I have spoken with?
Yeah, rapidly evolving technology. I mean, there's always something new, and I call it kind of shiny object syndrome, that we need to stay focused on the things that are going to help our company communicate their message most effectively and or make their teams work more efficiently together. So, I mean, during the pandemic, I think the number is almost 3,000 new tools were added to the space that touched all aspects of the marketing funnel. So from customer experience to data intent tracking, and that's just sales side or marketing side. That's not touching sales or customer success. So an additional 3,000 tools. Yet on the flip side of that coin, the effective usage of said tools is actually decreasing. So people are adding more to their stacks, yet they're not leveraging those technologies in an efficient or effective manner. So it just adds to the noise versus simplifying everything. So the main recommendation that I'd make for any CMO or any leader of any kind is the simplest tech stack is the best. And you don't want it so simple that you can't get good insights from it, which we'll touch on in a minute, but you want it simple in the sense that you're not having your team sign into 15 different tools to get their job done.
The other thing, you and I've met, we work with some brilliant CMOs who are very good at what they do. This just isn't necessarily a core competency. And we see that they don't know what questions to ask, or they don't want to know, the nth degree of how some of these tools and platforms work. But it's a classic case of, raising the bar on the tech savviness of that CMO, not to necessarily have the answers, but be able to consistently ask better questions. And I think that will raise the bar in addressing some of that tech stack challenges.
Yes, absolutely. CMOs are being tasked and have been tasked with managing technical resources, from website developers to admins of their marketing automation tool, and not knowing what questions to ask really can put them at a disservice if you don't have a strategic person leading that function. So in your operations role, so having the ability to ask better questions and elevate that conversation is really going to be key to all the executives, not just the CMOs, because CROs are also tasked with managing technical resources on occasion.
Love it. Moving on, I'm building on that. Next one is data-driven decision-making.
Yeah, there's a ton of data. There's always going to be a ton of data, but it's tracking the right data. And so it's the responsibility of not only the CMO, but also the team that supports that CMO to understand the outcome that they're after. So then they can create a solution and the appropriate tracking touch points to understand, are we getting closer to that outcome or are we missing our mark? And so tracking everything is never going to drive better decisions, but tracking the key touch points and knowing what those key touch points are along the user's journey is really going to be helpful in growing the business in an intelligent way.
And we're increasingly seeing the reliance on data. I recently read, data is the renewable energy, right? So the continued reliance on data, and as you've always said, the right things to measure to really get your finger on the pulse of not just what's happening, but why. Yes. And how do we manipulate the right levers in the investments we make to get not just the output, but the outcome and the impact in the business we're after. And that beyond your intuition, beyond your years of experience, that data-driven decision-making as a culture becomes invaluable. Moving on to the next one, this idea of personalization and customer experience. You mentioned it around the customer experience, the life cycle journey earlier. Talk about personalization and how do you do this effectively at scale?
It is one of the trickiest things to do at scale because everybody comes and interacts with your information, with your website, with your user journeys in their own way. And so it's creating the intended path, but then allowing alternative routes, if you will, a choose your own adventure. And that really comes down to making sure that you have your content mapped to the different personas. You have a very tight ICP that you're willing to focus on, and that you also have the support from the internal marketing sales side to leverage all of those different touch points. And back to the first point, there is technology that can help with this. When it's implemented correctly and strategically, it actually can take some of that heavy lifting off of your team's plates. So content consumption tools is an example of one.
And Jen mentioned, ideal customer profile, ICP. Again, we take it one step further. What's that ideal relationship profile? What is that relationship that you really want to get to know? And sociologists call it being ambient aware. The reason content mapping to those personas matter is the more you understand about their likes, their dislikes, their preferences, their prejudices, right? And what they need to better understand their challenges and opportunities, to better address those, and the stair step, the maturity level with which they will address it is critical because it deepens that relationship. Again, layman's term is they get me, or we have chemistry, or, oh my gosh, they have exactly the answers I need at the moment that I need them. So the messaging, the delivery of that messaging, the customization, personalization that makes me feel like this is very relevant to me. I equate this, the audience is going to chuckle at this. I don't, this is not a religious comment, but if you're sitting in church and the pastor says something and you get a nudge from the person sitting next to you of, do you hear that? Are you hearing? Not that I'm speaking about my world at all, but are you hearing that? Are you hearing? That's personalization. And how often are we getting that from the marketing messages we get, or the website, or the content that we read? When we do get it, it's just the light bulb's going off. Oh my gosh, they're addressing exactly what I need at the time and via the channel of my choosing, which we'll talk about that in a second. But this personalization goes a long way.
Well, next one. We move on, just real quick, talking about the ICP and the ideal relationship profile, one of the things that we've also talked about with some of our clients is, who do you not want to be focusing on? And so everybody's so focused on, these are the people that we want to attract, yet they don't have any path for the people that may be interested in their solution, but are just learning, or are never going to buy, but they're fans of what that company is doing. For example, SpaceX. I don't know how many people are going to be able to go to space, but everybody's really interested in it. There should be some level of communication or education path that any person that would be willing to consume, but also a path of the people that will be buying your solution. So focusing on both is also really important.
I love that. And just like we use the analogy of, there's a reason guardrails protect us from going over a 200-foot cliff in the, let's just say, the North Georgia mountains, or any dangerous roads you may travel. Your ICP, your ideal relationship profile, should also keep you from getting distracted by good people, good intentions, but people you have no business pursuing. And, I'm having a difficult conversation with an outfit now that is trying to help us, but they're engaging the wrong people that are just probably good, really good people, really, fine people, but not relevant to what we do. And it's just beyond touching him the first time. Let's not keep going, because you're wasting limited cycles and resources in pursuing someone that is just not a viable fit. So continuing on that note, this idea of maintaining that brand consistency and authenticity. Jen, I've talked a lot about trust is credibility. We know more about our space, plus empathy. We can be quiet long enough to understand where you're coming from, multiplied by consistency over time. And it seems like that brand consistency is just as critical in that journey.
It absolutely is, not only from a people perspective, but also how they engage with your brand and your messaging digitally. So you've talked about this a lot in your books. How you consistently show up is what people will, that's the perception that people will have of you. And so by being consistent, you're allowing them to know what that interaction is going to be like. And so it's not spastic. One day it's fantastic. Next day is, oh my gosh, who are these people? Complete 180. And so being consistent across all channels, across all interactions, and ensuring that as you onboard new people, they hold that same standard is really, really important to not only growing your brand, but have people want to continue to engage with you.
And again, in casual conversations with executives, I often talk about, everybody has a BS radar. And this also includes your target audience. And if you're not being authentic, if you're not being the real you and the brand that you represent, I think people are going to see right through that. So increasingly, we're seeing this to be as critical in aligning that brand offline as it is online. And in essence, we talk about it that both of them better be in line, because if I read something and then I meet someone and the two of them are not at all what I expected, you're going to create cognitive dissonance of like, wait, that's not what I read about them online, or the position paper or a webinar I downloaded. And the executive I met was really friendly and customer centric. And here's a sales rep or here's a customer service rep that could care less about me. And that just confuses people. So it isn't your positioning, right? As a matter of fact, forget positioning. It's about those touchstone moments that, as Jen mentioned, you, your team, your organization create in every touch, every time. And again, the consistency of that goes a long way. Balancing short-term and long-term goals. Obviously, we're big fans of OKRs, objectives and key results, but CMOs increasingly, Jen, are having to balance, what do I get done in this lead gen campaign this month or this quarter with the long-term viability of our function and our organization.
Yeah, and setting the long-term and short-term goals really does come back to our point too about having good data. So not only knowing what it takes to affect maybe your numbers this quarter, but knowing what the downstream effects are of the campaign that you're running today. Maybe it does, your sales cycle is 90 days. Okay, well, if we're needing to increase leads, whatever we do today is not going to affect this quarter. It's going to be next quarter. What are the levers we can pull to accelerate that? Or how can we shorten that time frame? So the balancing of short and long-term goals, I mean, one, you need to know what those goals are. And two, you need to have the data that people can trust and believe in to properly manipulate and affect the outcomes of those goals.
And communicating those. So again, in my work on strategic relationships, what I'm coaching CMOs to really think about is how proactive are you in communicating those challenges, opportunities, milestones. You don't have to get into the details of the minutia, but really measuring your progress through milestones and communicating that with your peers as well as higher ups is going to be critical. It was a fascinating directors and boards piece in the latest newsletter on corporate governance of how boards are building closer relationships with their organization CISO, and they were talking about critical that boards get and keep their finger on the pulse of the organization's cybersecurity posture. And the whole time I'm thinking, what about the company's go-to-market strategy? What about the company's marketing, sales, customer service initiatives? I know of a local tech company that is really struggling with their churn. And today happens to be a board meeting, and it's not going to be a pleasant one because that churn numbers are not improving. And at some point, the board's going to be asking, how are we nurturing those? They should be asking, how are we nurturing relationships from the onset to set the right expectations and then ensure their success, their adoption, the impact in their business with our solution, and their success, so we kind of keep them coming back around. And that is increasingly looked at the CMO, the CRO, and the chief customer officer to keep driving those forward. So this balance becomes a critical one. Onward to another painful, depending on how you look at it, talent management, skills development. It seems to be, Jen, a moving target.
It most definitely is a moving target. And you and I have talked about before, the talent market is tight, and finding good people that have the skills necessary is going to be hard and or expensive. So finding people who are very eager about what they're doing and those self-starters that are willing to learn and sort of take the initiative to grow themselves is going to be important, but also having ways to develop your internal talent to level up as the business grows, give them opportunities to own bigger projects or a bigger piece of the project, or have a more strategic role in whatever function that they're owning. And so the skill development is going to continue to be absolutely essential in everybody's career trajectory, but also in the ability to keep your talent and keep them engaged in their roles, so they're not constantly job hopping.
So I have to ask you, did the global pandemic ruin the whole talent agenda, talent conversation? Do people really know what they, and people in the marketing function, do they know what they want? Are they willing to put in the hard work that I think you and I have over the years to maybe start at an entry-level position and learn and grow? Have we ruined an entire generation of marketing professionals with massive salaries and asking them to do things that are beyond their skill sets? Talk about what you're seeing and the impact of the global pandemic on marketing talent.
That is an interesting conversation for sure. So one of the biggest things, especially around marketing talent or any digital type role, more and more, and especially highlighted in the pandemic, they want remote flexibility. And I mean, I jokingly say, if I have internet, I can work, when it's in fact true that I've been able to do what I do from all over the place. And so that remote flexibility is really important to everybody who's now in the job market, and especially in digital and or marketing roles, that they don't necessarily have to be physically in an office. However, I will also say that marketing function, a lot of that creativity and that dynamic play off each other comes from being collectively together. Most often it's best when you can physically be together. So you can whiteboard together, you can just kind of spitball ideas, and it's not fragmented through the Hollywood squares when you're kind of talking over each other. So I think continuing to highlight the hybrid relationships is going to be really important. I've done some great work with companies that are fully remote, but their remote culture is very, very intentional, and they have created ways to create those relationships that are very close in the remote environment. the companies that were in office and now are hybrid or now trying to go back to the office, they're going to continue to struggle until they find that right balance between in-office requirements and how to allow people to be flexible with their location.
Just a data point to add to build on Jen's comment. I'm increasingly leaning towards, and for our own growth as well, give me the attitude, give me the excitement about learning and growth, give me someone who wants to be there, and we can always teach them the skills. We can always raise the bar on what they do and how they do it. We can always pour love and support into growing them professionally, personally. I can teach them the skills. If the attitude is not there, if the excitement is not there, if the initiative, the creativity, the resourcefulness is not there, neither me, you, or anybody else is going to be able to make a difference. Number two, in all my experiences, I've always believed the first 30 days are a pretty good indication of what you're going to get in that person's, because we're talking about grown adults, right? First 90 days is exactly what you're going to get from that talent. Are they prompt? Do they show up prepared? Do they show up excited? How do they deal with setbacks and challenges? Do they collaborate effectively with others? Are they just an island and behave as such? Or do they really want to work with others to get things done? I don't think any leader expects any individual to have all the answers. What leaders that I know, respect, trust, highly, highly appreciate is people who can go find the answers, right? Go get creative, go get scrappy, go get within legal and ethical boundaries, go figure out how to get that done without coming back and asking. And I don't know how to. So that talent, I think, is going to continue to be a challenge. One. Two, for the talent side, I think, Jen, you and I have talked about this. With the advent of increasingly more kind of normalized, you remember we used to call it e-commerce, and now it's just commerce. I genuinely believe all the hype around AI and ML, it will just become integrated into kind of what we do. But if a lot of those intelligent learning generative engines are replacing the role of, in many ways, traditional copywriters, or our colleague Lynn Wilson, who's our creative director on the StratViz side, is experimenting with Midjourney for his teaching class, and the images Midjourney can create, automate based on a description of, if DeWalt was in the toaster business, here's what that would look like. That just eliminated, a graphic designer that would take hours to create something like that. So increasingly the talent, the mundane, is, I believe, going to continue to get replaced by advent of, number one, evolving technology. So I want to reiterate your comment about that collaborative nature of getting marketing talent together to whiteboard, to strategize and really think through campaigns and really bring different perspectives. Put the onus on the talent to never stop growing and learning. Don't become complacent. Show up, more creative and collaborative than you ever have before, because that's how you're going to ultimately continue to add value to the function.
I would add one more.
Please.
Remain curious. So new technologies provide an opportunity to learn something new about something you've previously done, or just learn something new in general. And to your point about leveraging AI to create brand identities or to storyboard or whatnot, some of the new roles that are coming out of that type of technology being leveraged is the people who are training those engines to develop those images and to develop that writing style. And so you've talked about it in your books, and we've talked about it with clients. You have to know how to ask better questions. It's still a technology. It is still a computer. And at a computer's core, it will do what it's told. And yes, AI and ML, they are learning engines. But if you are not asking it more intelligent questions, it is not going to produce a better product for you. So the people, the talent who are training these technologies get to ask better questions to then generate the results that an organization is looking for.
And again, big part of our coaching work is just that. How do we ask better questions? So very apropos that this week is the RSA, which is a big cybersecurity conference out in San Francisco, managing customer data privacy and security.
Yes, this has increasingly been a topic here in the United States of customer data security. People want to know what you're doing with their data, if you're sharing it with others. So that control of their own digital identity is really, really important. In the European communities, it's been a conversation for some time with the advent of GDPR. So having tight data practices within your own organization is going to be really important, and maintaining a clean database and knowing where your leads came from is also going to be increasingly important. You and I have talked about database management and how it really is everybody's job within an organization. At the same time, bad data in, bad data stays. And so as a CMO, as a leader of the organization, and having data be your company's biggest asset digitally, it's going to be increasingly important that you have that secure in a way that people trust you, back to your brand consistency and authenticity, to give you their data. Because if they don't trust you and if I fill out this form, I'm going to get 20 phone calls and I don't want that, they're going to be hesitant to fill out that form. Or if you're constantly getting breached, they're not going to want to do business with you. So maintaining that privacy and security is absolutely critical.
The other thing is, like anything else, few bad actors make everybody look bad. So really taking the high road, again, I tend to think of my own behaviors. I'm reluctant to fill out that information if I know you're going to bombard me. And some of one of my favorite privacy policies: we will never rent out or sell your information to anyone for any reason. That wasn't a 50-page scroll through your policy. It was a commitment that we value information. And I'm reminded of Bruce Kasanoff, longtime friend and former CEO, always said, remember information for people, not about them. When you remember information for people, it's for their benefit. When you remember information about them, it's for yours so you can spam them. And I think increasingly people are going to disengage from those types of environments. But data privacy security, again, has got to increasingly become everybody's job. Next one, obviously a big one that we're big fans of, aligning, I'm going to add consistently, with other departments, other functions.
This alignment is absolutely critical to having a unified customer experience. And we've talked about in that customer lifecycle journey, it's a handoff between the departments, like a relay race, if you will. And the CMO, I feel, is being tasked to do some of this collaborative work with the other departments, because they do control the messaging. They do control sort of the digital presence. And so it makes sense for them to be that glue between the various departments to help them work more effectively together.
Yeah, and again, I my litmus test is anytime I go into a company and you hear us and them, those useless people over there, right, versus we, you kind of know, you get the sense that we're not clicking on all cylinders. We're not, effectively communicating we challenges, we opportunities. How do we collectively look at addressing those? And there are several executives that we work with who are very intentional about building that we culture. And it shows. It shows in how they show up. And, for any of our audience members who have kids, our kids are sponges, right? They just watch everything that we do. The exact same thing with the CMO staff. The team looks at how you carry yourself, how you collaborate with your peers and other functions, and the behaviors you model is exactly the behaviors they're going to demonstrate. So if you continue to talk about we, and if you work through we challenges and we opportunities, they'll do the same. Conversely, if it becomes, that wasn't us, no, not me, no, that wasn't marketing, it was that group, that's when it becomes problematic. Jen?
And that problematic, as a company, your sales department is not going to, for example, if you're a startup, your sales department is not the one that's going to be IPOing. The whole company is going to get there, or no one's going to get there. So it can't be an us and them. It's consistently a we, and shifting your culture to ensure you're reinforcing that is going to be key as well.
The next couple are, again, aren't going to be a surprise to anybody. Adapting to this economic uncertainty. We refuse, again, as a team, we refuse to participate in a recession, right? So I continue to believe a lot of the uncertainty is psychological, because we have clients that are growing. I was on a flight to Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. There wasn't a single seat empty on the airplane, and the hotels are booked. And we've got travel clients that can't hire fast enough and train and develop their people fast enough. And the big break they took during the pandemic, guess what? It's back in a big way. So psychologically, are you cutting? And I'm a big believer of cut excess fat, cut unnecessary redundancies, really tighten the aperture to focus. But when you start cutting into muscle and bone, because you're afraid of the uncertainties, that becomes problematic. So Jen, talk about really adapting to these uncertainties and kind of market changes.
Well, adapting to the market changes, this is having both that micro view as well as that macro view and those short and long-term goals. So ensuring that you know what's happening currently, but almost looking at your marketing strategy or your business strategy as a chessboard. Know what 2-3 moves down the road may look like to your organization, to the market that you're playing in, and be really intentional about the moves that you're making. So don't put everything on hold because business is going to come back. Continue doing what you're doing and make very strategic, bold moves where it makes sense, because those who put their marketing on hold or those who stop what they're doing are not going to be able to make up that ground into the future. One of my mastermind groups, we talk about this pretty frequently, that those who stop what they're doing either won't ever come back to the same degree, or if they do, they will always remain behind because they didn't keep their their foot on the pedal moving forward. And they don't have to do anything radically. Just maintaining status quo sometimes can be good enough.
The three areas I continue to see a lot of companies cut back on: travel, training, and marketing. Three of the worst things you could cut when it comes to your relationships. Again, don't misconstrue my comment. We're also prudent. We're watching kind of where we invest. But if you drastically cut, I talked to one client really embarking on a phenomenal opportunity. I mean, just an unbelievable multi-billion-dollar opportunity at the onset of the year. In our we were planning this kickoff meeting, and in a subsequent conversation was, companies got a mandatory cut on any and all travel whatsoever. And I'm like, that couldn't be, you want to say that, but that couldn't be a dumber idea of, we've got this brilliant opportunity. Let's not get people together because we're going to spend this is a multi-billion-dollar company. We're going to spend a few $1,000s on travel and training, right? There's never a good time for training. But I'm reminded of, the adage, you may have seen the cartoon, a CFO asks the CEO, what if we train all these people and they leave? And the CEO's response is, what if we don't train them and they stay? So training and developing your people, and that goes back to number 6, the talent, it is never a good time for it. But if you don't do that, as markets are cyclical, as it starts to come back to Jen's comment, are you really in the right position to take advantage of those opportunities? And then marketing, again, cut back on redundancies, absolutely. Zero basing everything, we're huge fans of that. But cutting into bone and muscle becomes problematic because the recovery from it becomes just dramatically that much more difficult. Last but not least, measuring and demonstrating ROI. so that it's not a cost, it's an investment. How do we ensure that we're measuring the right things and we quantifiably, materially show an impact on those from those investments?
Yeah, one of the things to your comment just a second ago about zero basing everything, a lot of organizations have their budgets that they've had years past and they just increase it because that's what they did last year. But justifying what it is that you're doing and why can really drive better decisions. But it also then allows you the opportunity to evaluate what's working and maybe what's not. And so measuring and demonstrating that ROI comes back to having an efficient tech stack, training and developing your people well, having the data necessary to support what it is you're doing, and the impact, not just from the surface level, we had this number of visitors to the website, but what does that mean? Translate that to me to dollars and cents, and how did that really drive business in a way that we should repeat or double down on?
Love that. So for our audience, again, 10, in the words of the famed philosopher Britney Spears, right? This is not rocket surgery. These, many CMOs are facing these. If you're watching us and watching the live stream, you also see the image of the CMO 2025. That's a Spencer Stewart position paper that we're fans of. In it, it talks about some critical aspects CMOs need to think about. We'll post a copy of that in our NOR forum. And if you're not familiar with it, norgroup.com/forum is our private online community. Jen runs a RevOps group, special interest group in there, if you will. So we'll put not just this presentation, but a link to that position paper in there for our audience. We encourage you to come join us. Again, NOR Group, NOUR Group.com/forum is our NOR forum private online community, and where we're there every day sharing ideas and perspectives. So Jen, I want to move on to another interesting perspective beyond those challenges. McKinsey's talking about the fundamental marketing organization challenged with capabilities gap, limited efficiency, the marketing spend, and really effectiveness of the team and technology. And I was fascinated that they talk about 81% of the companies they surveyed don't have an integrated marketing technology stack, tech stack that you often talk about that specifically personalizes experiences. 76% of companies that don't successfully operate in sprints or kind of follow any kind of a formal agile process. And then, again, 67 CMOs say they're overwhelmed by the quantity of marketing data available to them. Comment on this for a second before we talk about multidisciplinary capabilities that we believe marketing organizations should own and follow.
Absolutely. So I would say most organizations don't have an integrated technology stack across the entire organization. So marketing, sales, customer success, DevOps, IT, they're all siloed in a way. And that's really where the true form of RevOps is coming from, is to unify all of that and create the frictionless environment that everybody's hoping to achieve. It's that frictionless utopia of technology. So the integration of their technologies is really important. It allows companies to reduce their tech debt and their tech bloat, because you'll have duplicate solutions across different departments that don't know one has a similar tool. To the middle section about not operating in sprints, with the pandemic and with everybody going remote, creating a cadence with which you are working is really important. And with more companies moving to that recurring revenue model, they're adopting some of the DevOps or developer type methodologies. So it's the agile, it's the 2-week sprints, it's kind of that Six Sigma project management, and iterating faster. So instead of planning in a little box and then releasing something, a lot of organizations are moving towards, let's get something good, an MVP, a minimal viable product, out, and then let's iterate upon it, because we've talked about version 1 is better than version none. And a lot of organizations are now adopting that. And the market also is increasingly more willing to accept that, because there are betas, there are just everybody has the ability and access at an elevated rate to technologies that are just starting out, that aren't widely available everywhere. So the market in general is more willing to have hiccups, if you will, in their experience, as long as you recover from them. So that agile work environment is really important. And then the last one about being overwhelmed by data. More technology means more data, which means a lot of, if you aren't focusing on the right things, it'll be analysis paralysis by too much to look at and not knowing what it actually is telling you. So having an ops team that can help you not only show you what is happening, but what does that mean and what can we do with it is going to be the next piece to the puzzle that the CMOs will need to solve.
The same for our audience, the same McKinsey research that we're talking about also highlighted this multidisciplinary capabilities, and we'll also post links to this one in the NOR forum. So again, norgroup.com/forum. Check out the RevOps group on the left-hand side navigation, where we share constantly unique perspectives and really talk through not just our own kind of thought and practice leadership, but really fascinating research that we find. Jen, I love this kind of pentagon of focusing on, from customer centricity to full funnel marketing, the agile operating model that we just talked about, multi-channel excellence. Love that one. How do we run in swim lanes? Measurements we're big fans of, and we're standing up our BizOps practice as well. And then customer data and marketing technology. Any comments on, I love the title of this as well, that marketing isn't going to get transformed by one particular capability. It really has to be all kind of cross intersection of all 6 capabilities essential for transformational marketing.
It really is all together, and it kind of goes back to our customer lifecycle journey. If you get really good at one, others may become lacking, or they might highlight an area where you can improve in other places. But these together are really going to allow your marketing team to work really efficiently. And it creates that learning and iterative methodology for your marketing organization, as well as just your broader company, that allows you to learn and move faster. So it's that iterative process that marketing organizations really need to focus on to allow them to be quick to respond to what the market and what the customers are wanting and doing.
Beautiful. So on that note, just as a friendly reminder for our audience, we've got Jen leads a fantastic RevOps practice, and we've built out a portfolio approach. So everything from a complimentary 1-week RevOps X-ray to a much more in-depth 30 to 45 days RevOps assessment, really looking at a tech scan, but also the processes and capabilities of the marketing, sales, customer service function, point solutions, where we come in anywhere along our amplified time to impact, ATI process, and really focus on buyer journeys. We focus on, optimizing kind of what you do and how you do it. Fractional support. We have clients that leverage our team for a Salesforce administrator or a HubSpot administrator. So really coming in on an interim or fractional basis to support what you're doing. We're seeing a lot of really interesting M&A opportunities. So whether you're exploring inorganic growth, but also the due diligence as part of that integration management office, the IMO office, all the way through integrating 2 different instances of Salesforce or HubSpot or Marketo or Eloqua or any of those environments. We're seeing some really interesting opportunities to consolidate separate CRM or marketing automation, or really getting proactive with resource planning and governance in M&A events. Last but not least is our managed services, where Jen and her team take over kind of clients outsource the entire kind of RevOps to us. Jen, any comments around the RevOps portfolio?
Other than our team is here to support in any capacity that our clients are needing, like you said, that we have the very focused solutions where it's a short-term engagement, but we've also managed entire tech stacks, setting that foundation and really building some of those internal operative processes that is really key to growth. So we love to tackle all of it, the big picture as well as the small tactical things. So just let us know how we can support your organization.
And on that note, again, this amplified time to impact, we're increasingly finding it really useful. It's a great conversation. So you can see the baseline assessment is where we start. The team can parachute in anywhere on that journey, or it becomes also a really rich conversation of where are you struggling? Where are you? We've met teams that are very good on the front end of the marketing side. And I tell sales leaders that the relationship really starts once, they sign and you sell. How are you helping them onboard and integrate and really create impact in their business through your solution? And we're really excited that we're developing this scorecard, this RevOps scorecard that imagine getting both a letter grade, but also a numeric grade anywhere on the journey. And it can kind of, do a deeper dive and understand not just what's happening with your environment, but why it's happening. So as Jen mentioned, we want to help. We're here to help. We hope this initial session on the CMO growth challenges has been of interest and value. As a reminder, as I mentioned, Jen and I are in our NOR forum on a daily basis, and we encourage you to come get not just copy of this presentation, but the additional resources we've touched on in this session, norgroup.com/forum. It gives you access to our private online community, roughly about 3,500 like-minded professionals are there. The RevOps group on the left-hand navigation is where Jen shares unique insights and perspectives. Copy of this presentation will be in there later today, as well as links to additional resources. And we're here to help. So we'll continue the series next week with Chief Revenue Growth, Commercial, kind of the CRO, the sales leaders, challenges, and opportunities. And then we'll wrap up this series with the Chief Customer Officers in a couple of weeks. So on behalf of Jen Kors, my partner, thanks for joining us. Jen, any final thoughts?
Join us in the forum, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Sounds great. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you. And as always, we're here to help. Let us know how we can support your efforts. Look forward to seeing you in the next session of our Intelligent Growth Live. Take care.